Cricket Last Stories with me, Neel Khagram. Today we're joined by Geoff Lawson. Geoff, how are you keeping down in Australia?
Well, Neil, not too bad considering. I think we've been fairly lucky in Australia. We got under the restrictions early and people have more or less behaved themselves. And we're coming out of summer, so it's been nice and warm, so people have been out and spread out rather than stuck in offices or public transport together. So yeah, I think Australia's as well off as anywhere.
It's good to hear, and fingers crossed we get back to some normality soon. Let's start with yourself, where it all began. Born in Wagga Wagga, New
Well,
South
that's
Wales.
Wagga.
Wagga
Wagga. Spelt Wagga, said Wagga.
Wagga, yeah. Apologies for our pronunciation. So Wagga Wagga.
Yeah.
Was cricket always a passion of yours?
Yeah, well, growing up in Wagga Wagga, it's a very big sporting town. It's a country town, sort of virtually halfway between Sydney and Melbourne. A fairly big country town by Australian standards, and sport was what everybody did. Now, that was your distraction. So I played, lots of different sports. In summertime, it was cricket, golf, and tennis. You had to fit those all into the one day. But cricket, yeah, I love the game. I loved listening to it on the radio, watching it on TV. Always wanted to be one of the famous players, and we played at afternoons at school, at home, until it got dark. So yeah, cricket was always high on the schedule.
Who was your childhood hero?
Well, a couple of guys. First of all, it was a guy called Neel Hawk, who was an Australian all-rounder, who bowled mostly, batted a bit, and then straight after Neel, so that's sort of late 60s, when I was only 10 or 11, and then after that was Dennis Lillie, who came along obviously in the early 70s and was absolutely brilliant, bowled fast and terrorised people. I fancied being Dennis Lillie in the backyard.
So did you play for your local club side, and when did you first get recognised and get into the New South Wales system?
Yeah, I played for my local school, Wagga Wagga Public. And I played club cricket for a club called Lake Albert Cricket Club, which is also where Mark Taylor and Michael Slater played in later years. So we all played for the same club in Wagga. And there was about 10 clubs in Wagga. Cricket was a very popular game. So there were a number of clubs. So when you finished school cricket in primary school, you moved on to a club. And my club was Lake Albert Cricket Club, which I'm still very proud to be associated with when I get back to Wagga. And I played sort of representative high school cricket. I played what they call combined high school. So I played for Riverina, which is my area in southern New South Wales, which extends, it starts about 450 k's from Sydney and extends out to about 1,000 k's from Sydney. So it's a large area. So I played a bit of rep cricket at that level. At 16 or 17, I played a bit of senior rep cricket, but not all that much. The state selectors didn't recognise me for any state sort of country or representative sides at that age. And it wasn't really until I came to Sydney and attended the University of New South Wales, where I played in the first grade side and went on from there.
And then 1977, Kerry Packer and the World Series took all the best players away. But that brought opportunities for players such as yourself. A little bit about that period?
Yeah, well, the 76-77 season was my first season in Sydney cricket. I went to the University of New South Wales. I studied optometry and I played cricket for the University of New South Wales. And as it happened, during this lock-in period, all the players from that team and their club members were going through every game of that season. And we're down to the final. We're going through it wicket by wicket every day, and everybody writes their reminiscences because we won the Sydney first grade premiership in my first year in Sydney, which is beating teams with state and test players. All the test players used to play club cricket, and I was only an 18-year-old from the country, and we had a number of other people from the young undergraduates who played in that side, and we're just reminiscing about that particular season and how cricket was in the forefront of everybody's mind because of the centenary test match, which was 76-77. And following on from that, obviously the World Series cricket. And so in the next season, 77-78, I played my first game for New South Wales. But I only played because all those good players, as you said, Neil, were taken off by Kerry Packer. And I was just a young kid. I wasn't that good. I really didn't deserve my spot in the New South Wales side. But they were scraping the barrel because all the very good players had gone off to play for Mr. Packer.
And then in '78, you come up against England. They were touring over. There was a little incident that's very well documented about barrage of bowling to Geoffrey Boycott. There's a little backstory to this, isn't there? Wasn't it? Whilst you were batting, and the late Bob Willis gave you a little send off, and that got you fired up. Do you want to talk a little bit about that story?
Yeah, that about sums it up. I mean, we're playing New South Wales versus the MCC, which is a pretty big game. You know, it's almost like another Test match, but we were depleted because of World Series cricket. But that's fine. And I was batting, I think 10 or 11, and I think I made a dozen or something. And Bob Willis bowled me a bouncer. No helmets in those days, of course. So Bob bowled me a bouncer, great, ducked. Then I think next ball or a couple of balls later, I holed out the mid off. Played a drive and got caught at mid off, and that was the end of the innings. And as I was walking off, I got sledged, and I thought that's a bit unfair. I'm the number 10 or 11, getting out to a Test bowler. I mean, who cares? Got out. But it did make me a little bit annoyed. And as it turned out, England only needed 2 runs to win by 10 wickets. And our captain at the time was Andrew Hillage, who was only playing about his 4th or 5th game for New South Wales. And he said, "Oh, don't worry about opening. I'll just get one of the batsmen to bowl a ball, and they'll make the 2 runs and we'll get off." And I said, "No way. That is not happening." Geoffrey Boycott happened to be facing, 8-ball overs in those days. And I think I probably bowled, I think I pitched the first one up, and then I bowled probably 4 bounces in a row, which were quite sharp, not necessarily well directed, but pretty quick. And Boycott, about the 3rd one, started to have a bit of a whinge about it. The umpire was a guy called Tom Brooks, who umpired a lot of Test cricket. Very lovely guy, very good umpire. And Tom, that I found out in later years, Tom was a fast bowler for New South Wales in the 50s, and he bowled lots of bouncers as well, apparently. But you wouldn't know it the way he umpired, because he umpired strictly to the letter of the law about intimidatory bowling. So anyway, I bowled, I think, 4 bounces in a row, and Boycott started to get a bit huffy about it. And Tom Brooks said, "Oh, that's enough." I'm like, "What? What are you talking about?" So I bowled another one, and he gloved it in front of his nose, and it just went over second slip's head. I would have loved to take the wicket, but Boycott was playing forward, thinking it was going to be full. It wasn't. It was another bouncer, and he just got away with it. And Tom Brooks warned me for intimidatory bowling, but it was too late. The game was over. I didn't think much more about it, to be honest. And so the press made a bit of a story about the next day.
And then '79, you get drafted into the Australian squad. They were touring India. You nearly get picked at Eden Gardens, but they go with a load of spinners. 1980, you then make your debut, first again in the ODI side against New Zealand, then I think a week later, was it, in the test match arena. What was it like to get the baggy green?
Well, yeah, pretty special. I mean, I was still a young kid, still doing university, just doing my best, I suppose. And I bowled, I used to bowl fast, not so straight in those days, but pretty solid pace. And obviously the selectors thought I was good enough to join all the players who'd been in World Series cricket. So Greg Chappell was playing, Doug Walters played, Dennis Lillie played, Rod Marsh played. So there was a lot of guys who were my heroes playing in that Test match. But yeah, to get picked was something very special indeed. I mean, I got picked for that tour of India, so I'd been given a baggy green and my lovely woolen sweater. And I remember putting that on the night I got that and sleeping in it, even though my sister thought I was being very stupid at the time, because I thought I might never ever get to get it for a Test match. And it took about another 18 months for that to happen. But yeah, look, those things are very special, and to walk out. Even if the first Test was at Brisbane and it was very hot and very sweaty, I still had my baggy green and my sweater on, just to say that I'd worn it on the field.
And then 81 was in the UK, the Ashes series, known as Botham's Ashes as such. You played obviously in the series, involved in that famous Headingley Test match. Talk us through that series from your perspective.
Yeah, well, it was a great series, to be honest. It was obviously captured everybody's imagination. Unfortunately for us, England won, but very fortunate for England. I mean, and Beefy played some superb innings and bowled wonderfully well. And that sort of stuff makes cricket folklore. When you look back on it, you go, well, what a fabulous thing to be a part of. I didn't think that at Headingley that day when we thought we had the game won. I mean, the series, we won the first test, I think at Trent Bridge, a very overcast game. It was a very wet summer for a start. So the bowlers were nearly always going to dominate. And I think Kerry Alderman bowled very well and Dennis Lillie in the first test. And we won, not by much, I don't think, maybe 3 or 4 wickets. I was actually at the crease batting with Trevor Chappell when we won the first test. So we had to be at least 7 down. And then we were well in front in Headingley, of course. And Beefy turned that one around. So, yeah, those things are quite debilitating at the time. And I hurt my back at tea on the 4th day. I think I snapped a ligament in my lower back. And once I'd stopped bowling, that was it. It was really difficult for me to even stand up, let alone play cricket. So I didn't bowl. I think I bowled a few hours after tea while I was still warm, but it was quite painful. I couldn't hardly stand up the next day when we had to come and bat. But those games make cricket history. And, every time you go to England, people remind you of Headingley 81. So you just remind them of numerous other test matches where you didn't. Yeah.
Can you sum up the rivalry with England, and from an Australian perspective, what does the Ashes actually mean?
Well, it's the peak of our cricket rivalry, and it goes back several hundred years, 250 years almost. It's colonialism versus imperialism. It's the colonists versus the master. It's all that sort of stuff, and that history is maintained. From the 1870s when the first Test match was on. The Australians wanted to play for Australia and prove that they were as good as the mother country by playing sport. And to a degree, that still happens today. I think, the world's much different than it was then. But to a degree, that history still permeates every England-Australian clash. And you see it every time the Ashes comes up. It doesn't matter if England and Australia are ranked 5th and 6th or whatever. When those two teams meet, it incites the imagination of all the England fans, Australian fans. I mean, I'm not sure what Indian and Pakistani fans or West Indian fans think about the Ashes, but England and Australian fans, it's still the series you really, really do want to win. I mean, you want to win all of them, but the Ashes, wow, that is the biggest of big deals in Test cricket. And
then after that 81 series, you actually then regained the Ashes down under. Dennis Lillee, your hero, wasn't playing. I believe he was injured. You get 34 wickets yourself in that series. How did that make you feel as a bowler? Is that the time when you really felt that that's where you belong in international cricket?
Yeah, look, I guess, because I got dropped after that first test in 80-81. I got dropped, even though we won by 10 wickets, and that I found that quite debilitating, let alone disappointing. So, to fight your way back in the side, I played 82. We toured Pakistan, and I had to do a lot of bowling there, and that was very hard work. And I had a pretty good series in Pakistan, which wasn't to be expected. Then we came back for that 82, 83 Ashes, which everybody thought was going to be close, and it was pretty close. And Dennis got hurt in the first test. His knee was just a mess and couldn't go on. And Terry Alderman was tackled by that spectator. He tackled the spectator, and he was out of the series. And Tomo was out of the. Well, Tomo came in. And the attack came about by accident almost. I think, Rackham, Hogg, Lawson, and Carl Rackham got injured as well in Brisbane. So, then Tomo came in, and there it was. We got the job done. But yeah, it was a great series for me. I mean, I bowled very well, made a few runs at the same time, and made a contribution. So, regaining the Ashes then, and I think it was only 2-1, and England had that great win at Melbourne by a couple of runs, which was incredibly exciting. Then we had a draw of the last test in Sydney, and that game was still in the balance up to the last sort of day and a half. So another very close series, and I played my part. And yeah, I did start to feel comfortable being in the Australian Test team.
And then the next two Ashes series doesn't go Australia's way. In the 87 one, you're also injured for most of it. But then how special was it in 89? You come over, a lot of people were just writing Australia off, and then you win it 4-0. Is that the one that stands out for you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean 82, 83 was pretty special, and 85 was, we lost our top 16 players, went to the Rebel Tour. We were missing them, and yet still that was a very close series. 86, 87, England played some great cricket in Australia under Mike Gatting. You know, they had a terrific team and played well. So 89 was that chance at revenge. I'd had obviously 2 Ashes tours, lost both, and feeling like at age 32 that this was definitely going to be my last tour. And Alan Border was feeling the same way, and of course the local media wrote us off. And I think to a degree the England players weren't expecting that big a contest. I mean, you always get a contest between England and Australia, but I think subconsciously they may have thought we were going to be easy to beat, and we weren't. We won a great victory at heading. That first test just turned it all around. Alan Border played aggressively. Mark Taylor came into his own. Steve Waugh started making 100 after 100. He had Boone and Jones to go with it. Marsh opening. Great combination. Ian Healy was coming into his own as a test keeper. And then basically, I guess, it's Hughes, Alderman, Lawson with a bit of help from Trevor Hones. Yeah, to only play 12 players in a whole 6 test series is something very special. But yeah, look, we won 4-0, but to this day, I can't work out why. England had some pretty good players. We just turned up and did what we had to do. And 89 was actually a really warm summer. So the pitches were harder and drier, and we liked the sun in our back. I mean, I hate playing cricket when it's cold or wet. So conditions favoured the Aussies a bit more than maybe they did in 81 and 85. So a few things went our way. And on top of that, we played some pretty determined cricket.
And we can't talk through the 80s without mentioning the great West Indies side. I think the way the scheduling happened, I believe you actually played 10 test matches in a row, 5 at home, 5 away. A word on that side, regarded by many as one of the greatest sides ever.
Well, they probably had 15 years of the greatest sides ever. But we seem to be playing them all the time. They came out of Australia, they played test series, they played one-day cricket, and the Australian Cricket Board just kept bringing them out, which is great for the crowds. The Australians loved them, but they're pretty tough to play against. And every time we had the odd test victory, which is terrific against them, but they were just way too strong. Magnificent batting lineup with Greenwich Haynes to start with Richards, Lloyd, maybe Richie Richardson, Larry Gomes would annoy you. Just couldn't get him out, Jeff Dujon would make runs, and then, Holding, Garner, Marshall, Roberts in the early days, and then Walsh later on, and then a few other guys like Wayne Daniel, Sylvester Clark to fill in. They were magnificent cricketers, and any victory over them was very, very well earned. So we had the odd victory in one-day cricket and the odd test victory, but that time we played them 10 test matches in a row, and I think it was, off the top of my head, it might have been 6-2 with a couple of draws. That wasn't a bad record, to be honest. 6-2 with a couple of draws and 10 tests against that side. I'm happy with that.
And then the back end of your career, you actually the skipper of New South Wales in your final year, 92. I believe I'm correct in saying that you actually won the Sheffield Shield. Again, a proud moment in your career?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I captained actually for about 3.5 years. We had a couple of wins in that time. Won the one-day title, won a couple of shields, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed my captaincy, particularly playing the SCG, where we'd always play 3 spinners, and captaining spinners and watching them do their job was a wonderful part of cricket. I wasn't just a fast bowling captain at all, captaining New South Wales with some very, very good. It was great to captain with the Test players because we had the Waugh brothers. We might have had Michael Bevan, Slater, Taylor, that sort of lineup. Greg Matthews, of course. They were great players to play with and great players to captain, but they certainly good players. So yeah, I really enjoyed captaining New South Wales.
Who was the greatest captain that you played under throughout your career?
Well, probably the greatest captain was the guy who captained us in our first grade premiership way back in 76, 77, because his name was John Rogers. And of course his son's Chris Rogers, who ended up playing, 30 odd test matches. So John was my captain in those days, and he encouraged all those spin bowls. He was a very positive attacking captain. He taught me a hell of a lot about the game, as did his brother Derek, who was my captain when I was in Wagga. So was very lucky to have those sort of guys teach me the fundamentals at a very young age, and then, you know, probably have someone like Rick McCosker when I first played state cricket, when World Series finished cricket and all the players were back. You know, Rick McCosker was a terrific captain as well. But just the experience, I think, of playing a lot with spin bowling in those conditions, it teaches you more about the game. You've got to learn all the different aspects of it. And the game teaches you itself a great deal. But if you get stuck with boring medium pace or a one-spin attack, or you play on wickets that are quite bland, which we get a lot these days, you don't actually learn too much about the game. But I was very lucky I played in conditions where bowlers actually had an opportunity, and they might have been spin bowlers, not necessarily seam bowlers. So you did tend to learn more about the game, and those captains were a big part of that education.
And who gave you the nickname Henry?
Well, I can tell you exactly, because Henry Lawson, the real Henry Lawson, is a very famous Australian journalist, short story, prose and poetry writer, one of the most famous. In fact, he was so famous, his picture was on our $10 note originally when it was issued. So the original Henry Lawson was a very, very, very famous guy, turn of the 20th century, late 19th, turn of the 20th century. He was very, very famous. And my name was Lawson, and the first day I turned up at the University of New South Wales Cricket Club, one of the guys I met there, a guy called Jim Robson, who by coincidence, his son Sam Robson's played Test cricket for England, even though he was born and bred in Sydney. Jim Robson gave me that nickname the first time he ever met me, and virtually everybody calls me Henry, including successive prime ministers all refer to me by that. They don't call me Geoff. So it goes back to 1976 at the University of New South Wales.
And after your playing career ended, did a little bit of coaching for New South Wales, media work. But then in 2007, the opportunity to coach Pakistan came about. Can you talk a little bit about that period, and then how did the opportunity actually come, and what conversations did you have to get the role?
Well, yeah, it's a fascinating story, because I was doing some coaching, plus I was working virtually full time in the media, doing ABC radio, TV overseas, writing a column which I still do for the Sun Herald. So yeah, I know I was really enjoying that, and I was actually doing more cricket with my club, more coaching there. And then I just got a phone call one day when I was pulling up in my driveway from an Indian friend of mine who lives in Sydney, and he said, you know, I think you'd be perfect to coach Pakistan. And I just thought he was taking the mickey, obviously. And that was obviously just after the 2007 World Cup, when Bob Woolmer, you know, tragically died after that game against Ireland. And I had no wish to coach any international cricket side, because I was pretty happy doing what I was doing. And I said, no, look, you know, 1,000 planets would have to line up for me to do that. That's just ridiculous. So forget about it. So 48 hours later, he rang me back. He said, look, you know, come on. I think you'd be brilliant at this job. Why don't you just go and have an interview and see how you go? So I said, oh, okay. I haven't been to Islamabad for about 25 years. I'll be good. I'll stop off in Dubai and play a bit of golf, and, you know, I'll have a couple of days. It'll be fine. So I went, and I prepared a presentation to give to the chairman of the board, Nazim Ashraf, who was a terrific guy. But Yasser Nazar was the head of their academy at the time, who I played against and got on really well with, and I, you know, thought he was a terrific cricket guy. And I gave a presentation up at a place called Murray, which is up in the mountains past Abbottabad. Yeah, lovely, lovely place. So having a board meeting there, and I just told them what I would do, and it was all about empowering players and getting them to make the rules that they stick to, which is very, very anti how Pakistan went about it. It was all about an authoritarian state and how players were supposed to behave, and you know, the administrators had all the power, and I just thought that didn't work, and that's why they were so inconsistent. And so I thought I'd never get the job with that presentation. So I went on my merry way, came home, and a week or so later, I got another phone call. I said, oh, how are you going? Said, oh, congratulations. I said, congratulations on what? Oh, we've decided you're the candidate. I said, you're what? And that was the first time I really, you know, it's struck home that I was going to be if I wanted to take it, I was going to be the Pakistan national coach. But I met the players when I was there. I met their new chairman, who was a wonderful guy who wanted cricket people to run the cricket. He didn't want to be the controlling influence. They had some new people in administration, and it seemed like they were heading in a very different direction to what Pakistan cricket had been in the past. So it was a combination of meeting the players and the players being very keen on my way of doing things, plus the administrators being open to so many things, which was not normally the case in maybe even India or Pakistan in those days. So, yeah, I made some provisos about if things weren't done properly, I'd just walk out. So, took the job, and I had a fascinating, wonderful, memorable time. Great time of my life.
And the highlight would it be just get into the final of the World T20?
Yeah, look, that's the highlight of playing in retrospect. I mean, just being with the guys and seeing them improve and how they responded to some new systems. And I bought my own, strength and conditioning coach, a guy called Dave Dwyer from Australia, who got on brilliantly with them. He set them some tough tasks, and they responded to it. And dealing with Mohammed Yusuf and Yunus Khan and those sort of people. Misbah al-Haq just got back into the side for that T20 tournament. And they were wonderful people. Shoaib Malik was just a young guy they made the captain. And I just really enjoyed their company, but they loved their cricket. They improved rapidly. And that T20 World Cup, we went into it with low expectations, just to enjoy ourselves, play to our limitations and not be scared of defeat, not worried about if we got beat. And we won. Well, we had that draw or that tie with India in the rounds, but we lost the bowl off. And then we lost the final by a couple of runs. So we played some pretty good T20 cricket, and I think all the players became aware that they could compete with any side in the world.
Do you feel you got a fair crack at the role? I know you're only in it for 15 months, I believe.
Oh yeah, well in the end, I mean, it's the political realisation in Pakistan that the government changed. I was fascinated by Pakistan culture, but also how government worked over there. I met Musharraf a couple of times, and it was fascinating time. Imran Khan was getting more into his politics at that time. I had a couple of meetings with him, but they had the national election, which had been put off after Benazir Bhutto had been assassinated in December '07, and they put it off for a few months, and to everybody's surprise, the government changed. I think the People's Party lost, and Zardari's party won. And once the government changes, everybody at the Pakistan Cricket Board just empties their drawer, because they answer to a state minister, and that minister will change. You'll be a friend of the new president, and so everybody gets out, and that's what happened. The new chairman of the board was eventually appointed, Ijaz Bhatt, and he was the polar opposite of Nazim Ashraf. He just wanted to control everything and micromanage, and I couldn't communicate with him. First of all, he ignored me for a month or so, even though his office was 200 yards from where I was living. But it just made no sense. He was a nonsensical person who wanted to take Pakistan cricket backwards at a rate of knots, and he didn't want me, even though the players wanted me. So that's not going to work in Pakistan. So you accept what goes on, and I was always prepared for that the politicians would have their way and their influences, and you've just got to accept that's what's going to happen. And eventually, there's no way I could have worked for Ijaz Bhatt. I just couldn't even, you couldn't have a normal conversation with him.
Did you have any desires to coach internationally in the subsequent years for any team? Did you have any conversations with any other teams?
Yeah, I've had quite a few conversations, but fortunately, I got to coach the IPL 2011. Done more work with New South Wales, and so there's been plenty of stuff going. I've done a few T20 franchises around the world. Got tied up with the Sydney Sixers again, and so there's lots of things happening. I've done some work for Afghanistan. I've worked with the Bangladesh Academy. I've worked with groups in Sri Lanka. I'll coach whoever feels like they need my help. I'm not that fussed about coaching one international side, but just helping to make players better.
And how do you view the game as a whole at the moment? And if we talk specifically about Australia, so they had a couple of years ago the ball tampering incident. They seem to have won back the public. Obviously they had this Amazon documentary. How do you view things, world cricket and Australian cricket? How do you view both at the moment?
Well, the game moves on, and it's moved on with its T20 influences. The 50-over World Cups are still important, but the 50-over matches in between don't seem to be. T20 internationals don't seem to have a lot going for them. But T20 World Cups do, and IPLs and big bashes seem to be very popular. So the fans are getting a lot of what they want, and they're also getting, the good Test cricket that's being played is still fascinating, and people want to watch it. I know in Australia there's still a huge appetite for Test cricket. People get into the big bash. Australians don't follow the IPL very much. It's on at very poor hours live here. A lot of games start at midnight over here, and people don't really get into the IPL. But the big bash is now part of our summer, and even non-cricket fans want to switch it on. At summer evening, they get home at 7 o'clock, they can switch on a game and follow the game, which is terrific. So T20's got its place. I think the most fascinating thing is that the Test cricket is still popular with a lot of people. You keep reading about people writing off Test cricket, yet the fans are still out there for it. Sometimes they're not turning up at the ground, but they're all watching it, they're taking it in, and Test cricket seems to have a primacy that the T20 never will have in another 100 years. So I think that's terrific, because most of the players acknowledge that the Test cricket is the best form to play, but they're making more money out of T20, and that's good. That's fine. Everyone's got to make $1 and move on. I think the next big move is to have women's cricket move to that sort of level and have their T20 tournaments recognised. It's just that sleeping giant. I think the WBBL does a bit of that, but there's some other things out there that can be even bigger than that.
And then the direction the Australian side at the moment is going in on the Justin Langer.
Well, I don't know about Justin Langer, but what's changed? They got Steve Smith and Dave Warner back. They became a very good side, and they've got a pretty good bowling lineup. So you got excellent bowling lineup. Smith, one of the best players in the world, along with Warner. Then the other guys have got to play support roles. So it's what team you put on the field. I think they're always going to win the public back. Obviously their behaviour leading up to that disturbed a lot of people, disturbed a lot of ex-players, that's for sure, not just the fans. But so they had to ameliorate that behaviour. There's no doubt about that, and they've done that pretty good. I mean, I think Tim Paine's the man who deserves the big pat on the back. He's been a terrific leader. He was brought in as a bit of a stopgap because his ethics were considered so high, but his cricket's also outstanding, and he's grown as a cricketer during this tenure as the Australian captain. So he's a pretty tough man to replace at the moment. But I'd certainly give Tim Paine a big pat on the back for what happens on the field.
Perfect, Geoff. Really appreciate your time today. Fantastic insight into your career. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Neel.
Perfect.
Good luck to everybody out there. Stay safe.
Stay safe. So Neel Khagram, Cricket Asteroids, Geoff Lawson. Thank you.